B. Collins.
Peter B. Collins, News and Comment. It's Thursday, October 26, 2017. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock Pacific, 5 o'clock Eastern Time, as usual, I'll be live on Facebook video. And I've just confirmed a special guest, investigative journalist Peter Byrne, will join us to talk about California's junior senator, Kamala Harris. It's a very interesting investigation he's done, and he will share the proceeds with us tomorrow, right here on the Peter B. Collins podcast. Now, I believe that the Democrats are losing control of what I call the Russiagate narrative. The sweeping claims, evidence-free, based on anonymous leaks and sources that we can't identify, piles of innuendo. It's starting to crumble. Now, this is not to say that Donald Trump is an innocent man, that he didn't use nefarious means to try to secure the election in 2016. But the central allegation that has been promoted by Democrats, by the Obama administration, by the intelligence community, and a compliant corporate media isn't holding up very well. Yesterday, we got the confirmation that the Christopher Steele dossier was paid for by the Clinton campaign and or the Democratic National Committee through the conduit of attorney Mark Elias. Elias had denied any involvement in it for months. And this obvious cover-up has allowed the Trump allies to pounce. And pounce they have. They are pushing back with a new investigation, and we discussed this yesterday. It's going to be highly partisan. It's the new Benghazi. But the Republican House Oversight Committee is planning to dig into issues from 2009, 2010, what are loosely known as the Uranium One scandal. And this involves sale of uranium stock from the United States to a company that over time became controlled by Russian investors. And the coincidence, at least as we look back at timelines, of the $500,000, 500 grand, that Bill Clinton got for a speech paid for by a bank in Russia that included a bonus meeting with Putin. And to fuel this, The Hill, that's an online media outlet that covers politics based in Washington, they have started to advance their reporting. Now, I've acknowledged that I was initially skeptical. I thought this was warmed over stuff that was being, regurgitated as a way to pump up Trump, try to deflate the Robert Mueller special counsel investigation, and essentially provide a diversion, talking points for Republicans who don't want to talk about Trump and Russia. But yesterday, the Justice Department, which is controlled, of course, by Trump and his little fellow Jeff Sessions, they released a former FBI informant from a confidentiality agreement. Now, this individual is still not named. The Hill knows who he or she is. But here's a quote. The Department of Justice has authorized the informant to disclose to the chairman and ranking members of the Senate Committee on the Judiciary, House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, that's Trey Gowdy, and the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, as well as one member of each of their staffs, any information or documents that he has, okay, we know it's a male, concerning alleged corruption or bribery involving transactions in the uranium market, including but not limited to anything related to Vadim Mikorin, Rosatom, that's a Russian uranium outfit, 10X, Uranium One, or the Clinton Foundation. Now, if you view this in purely partisan terms, and this informant is represented by a highly partisan right-wing Republican, Victoria Toensing, well, she got this formal letter from the FBI on Wednesday night, clearing the way for him to testify before Senate and House committees. And a quote from Tonsing, "The FBI has informed me they're releasing my client from his non-disclosure agreement so he can testify to Congress about his work uncovering the Russian nuclear bribery case and the efforts he witnessed by Moscow to gain influence with the Clintons in hope of winning favorable uranium decisions from the Obama administration." Now, as I've said, this is one of many dirty deals linked to Bill Clinton's personal enrichment via paid speeches, and the Clinton Foundation, which I have described as an intersection of politics, influence, and dirty money. Saudi Arabia, one of the biggest donors to the Clinton Foundation. And the whole Russia angle was used to distract likely Clinton supporters last year, saying, oh, don't look at that, that's all made up. And the conflation of her emails with John Podesta's emails, the claim that Russia was responsible for the release of all of them, when there were 33,000 emails from the State Department that clearly didn't have anything to do with Russia or WikiLeaks or any of that. And that showed how Doug Band, who was running the Clinton Foundation, could get in touch with people like Huma Abedin and Cheryl Mills over at the State Department and persuade them to make room on Hillary Clinton's schedule for big donors to the Clinton Foundation. And I've talked to you about other deals that were revealed only by Hillary Clinton's State Department emails. You don't have to go to Russia. You don't have to blame Putin or any murky forces. And we have the latest attacks on Russia Today and Sputnik. I was surprised by the large audience that RT has generated on YouTube. But that is then used with what is, in my view, accurate and worthwhile reporting that happened to be on RT about the Clinton Foundation, about the doubts that many Democratic voters had about Hillary as a presidential candidate in 2016. And the fog and the bullshit are so thick. And there are many honorable and smart people who simply accept this because, hey, it was in the New York Times, Peter. Are you smarter than the New York Times? Well, the New York Times has done a lot of crappy reporting on this. And I can't predict where all this goes next, but it's not going to be pretty for those who have bet heavily on the Trump-Russia narrative. And have you noticed how all of a sudden Rachel Maddow developed an interest in Africa? The 4 dead soldiers, that's embarrassing to Trump. It's potentially his Benghazi. And she ordinarily just ignores most foreign news. She thinks her viewers just want to hear bad shit about Trump and his Republican allies. But she's made room for the new developments that are embarrassing to Trump about Africa. And I haven't heard her report that it was Barack Obama who deployed troops to Niger. Trump didn't do that. They were already there. The other interesting development today relates to WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. And I have long had questions and curiosity about this data firm that works on elections, Cambridge Analytica, owned by the Mercer family, Steve Bannon on the board of directors, experts in mining the data that you can get from Facebook if you're an advertiser for micro-targeting purposes. And there are 2 developments related to Cambridge Analytica. One is that the head of it, he doesn't carry a title like CEO, is a man named Alexander Nix. And in an email, he told several people that he had contacted Assange about Hillary's State Department emails and the alleged 33,000 messages that were deleted as personal or, not relevant to her professional duties. We know that some of them were embarrassing professional duty emails that were wrongly deleted. But when some of those were released, and let's credit Jason Leopold, he was at Vice News at the time, he led the effort to force the release of the Clinton emails, including those that had been deleted. So apparently Cambridge Analytica approached Julian Assange and WikiLeaks and offered to help index this big batch of new, formerly deleted messages once they became available to make them more searchable. And Assange confirmed that Cambridge had reached out to him last year. Here's a tweet. Julian Assange, I can confirm an approach by Cambridge Analytica prior to November last year and confirm that it was rejected by WikiLeaks. So I thought maybe there was a back channel and that Cambridge Analytica, which operates internationally, might have used its offshore resources to launder material that may have come from Russia. But at least if it was published by WikiLeaks, Assange is strongly and stoutly denying that. Then we have to ask, what's up with Trump and his campaign, what's left of his campaign, because they issued a weird statement yesterday trying to claim that Cambridge Analytica did not have a significant role in the November election. Now they're parsing. They're trying to suggest that they worked for Trump during the primary, but that when it came to the general election, that the Trump campaign exclusively used the data that was available from the Republican National Committee, from Reince Priebus's operation. Now, in the past, they've talked about how shitty that data was. But now they're saying that it was so good that they didn't use Cambridge Analytica. They paid them $5.6 million. It's not clear if that was for the primary or for the entire campaign cycle. But just a few months ago, an official at Cambridge named Molly Schweikert was in Germany bragging about how Cambridge Analytica's models, which melded the company's own massive database, new voter surveys, including Facebook, were instrumental in day-to-day campaign decisions, including helping determine Trump's travel schedule, and how they were used to drive decisions on advertising, how to reach out to financial donors. And Schweikert says that Cambridge didn't start working for Trump until June, after he had the nomination wrapped up. But that doesn't stop Michael Glassner, who was executive director of the Trump campaign, to minimize the role Cambridge Analytica played in electing Trump. In a statement, he said the campaign relied on voter data from the RNC. Any claims that voter data from any other source played a key role in the victory are false. Now, Trump's data managing guru, I can see his face now. I saw him interviewed on 60 Minutes. I can't summon his name at the moment. But he told 60 Minutes that he didn't use Cambridge Analytica data, and that came as a surprise. Trump is notoriously cheap. He stiffs many of the people who've worked for his real estate empire. That's widely known. But it appears Cambridge got paid $5.6 million. Didn't start work until June. Meanwhile, there is a rift that has developed at the Senate Judiciary Committee. They were, we believe, looking into the firing of James Comey and whether that amounted to obstruction of justice, perhaps a few other things. And it's clear now that the Democrats and the Republicans in that committee are not on the same page. And yesterday, Chuck Grassley, the chair of that committee, sent a letter to the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network seeking information about any suspicious financial transactions that banks may have seen on individuals and businesses since January of 2015, and they name names including Natalia Veselnitskaya, the Russian-American lobbyist who was at that celebrated meeting with Don Jr. at the Trump Tower in June of 2016, a lobbyist named Robert Arakelian, who I believe was also at that meeting. and the principles of fusion GPS, Christopher Steele, the former British intelligence agent. And get this, because, the big overarching claim is that a foreign power interfered in our election, that foreign agents, Russian agents, including hackers who may have had no direct connection to the Russian government, that they were responsible for misleading Americans on Facebook and Twitter. Well, the hiring of Christopher Steele through Fusion GPS, an American intermediary, how is that so different from the claims that Russian agents were inappropriately involved in helping Trump by messing around on social media? So it's getting really messy. And unless Trump declassifies critical information, and I remind you, as I have before, that Barack Obama could have declassified quite a bit before he left the White House, the evidence-free Trump-Russia narrative is in danger of collapsing. We'll continue to monitor it. 45 today issued an executive order declaring a national health emergency related to the opioid crisis, which claimed more than 59,000 lives last year alone. And Trump is not going all in. He took the less sweeping approach, and essentially no new money will be made available, but state and local officials will be able to borrow from other health and human services funds to try to divert money for opioid addiction treatment and related matters. So that means that money for flu vaccines, money for early intervention in cancer cases, all kinds of funds will be shifted away from critical medical issues to attempt to address the opioid problem. And you know how Trump says he wants to build that wall on the southern border and get Mexico to pay for it? Well, I think that we should force the Purdue Pharmaceutical Company, which has earned billions in profits while addicting millions of Americans to opioids and to street heroin and to fentanyl, which is a real killer. They ought to pay for it. I'm sure that wouldn't happen because it would involve grabbing money from billionaires. And Trump certainly wouldn't want that. But the mechanisms, the infrastructure, the Health and Human Services Department does not have a secretary right now. The Office of National Drug Control Policy, the drug czar position, is not filled because Tom Marino was exposed by 60 Minutes in the Washington Post as a man who was owned by the pharmaceutical industry. And to compound things, the billionaire founder of Insys Therapeutics was arrested today, and he's charged with participation in a scheme with other executives to bribe doctors to prescribe a fentanyl-based cancer pain drug and to defraud insurers. He is facing charges of conspiracy to commit racketeering, mail fraud, and wire fraud. The indictment filed in Boston. And the guy who's involved here, John Kapoor, a 74-year-old billionaire who founded the company, they promote a drug called Subsys, an under-the-tongue spray that contains fentanyl, and it is an effective pain reliever. But it is as highly addictive a substance as I'm aware of. That's a very interesting development. We generally don't see the suits who run pharmaceutical companies held accountable for anything, including the obscene profits that they extract from the American public. And here he comes, Tiny Jeffrey Beauregard Jim Crow Sessions III, our Attorney General. I do think this whole country needs to be not so lackadaisical about drugs. When you talk to police chiefs consistently, they say much of the addiction starts with marijuana. It's not a harmless drug. We got to reestablish first a view that you should just say no. people should just say no to drug use. I apologize to our Southern listeners who may be offended by my poor Southern accent, y'all. But he's just so full of shit. And he's trotting out the reefer madness fears. Marijuana is not addictive. It is rarely a gateway drug, especially to these heavy pain relievers. The gateway is a prescription that came from a doctor who is somehow oblivious to the addictive properties of the drugs and the pills they've passed out. Jeff Sessions going to update and put out a sequel to Nancy Reagan's DARE program, and we're all going to have to say, don't say no again. And we know that prohibition does not work. And Trump himself, in his announcement today, said, well, he wants some really powerful advertising. Yeah, hard-hitting messages on TV. Well, anybody my age remembers laughing at the TV ad that came out from the Nancy Reagan era of an egg frying in a skillet and being told this is your brain on drugs. I mean, that stuff is ridiculous and it doesn't work. And 2 studies of the Reagan-era drug efforts, one in 1994, funded in part by the Justice Department, found that the DARE program had little to no impact on drug use. And in 2011, the National Institute of Justice rated DARE as having no effects, no statistically significant impact on drug use or attitude towards drug for students involved. But just like pretending that abstinence prevents unwanted teen pregnancies, we're going to pretend, once again, that these programs work and that locking people up is going to stop the flow of illegal drugs. Every day I like to pause for a second and thank the people who support my work here at the Peter B. Collins Podcast with your subscriptions. People like Terry Paris, Grant Gibson, Bill Janetta, and the incredible Benny Alto in Oregon, who's got a subscription for each of his, is it four dogs now? Thanks, Benny. And I want to mention that some people don't like to use PayPal, and some people like to just send in a check once in a while. I welcome that. I have a new P.O. box that I want to share with you. It's up on the sign-up page at the peterbcollins.com website. But if you want to send me information, you want to mail a check, you want to send me an article, anything you'd like to do, the way to use the Postal Service is to address it to Peter B. Collins at Box 150660, San Rafael, California, 94915. I'll repeat that. It's Box 150660, San Rafael, that second word R-A-F-A-E-L, California, and the zip code is 94915. I appreciate your support, however you express it. Well, the House passed what one Republican described as a budget that nobody believes in so that we have the chance to vote for a tax bill that nobody's read. That's a slam that came from Congressman Matt Gaetz, a Republican of Florida. And the vote in the House was expected. The approval was expected. But the margin was only 4 votes. 20 Republicans voted against the meaningless blueprint that includes the power language that enables tax cuts to be passed as reconciliation, requiring only a majority vote in the Senate, not 60 votes. And so the Republicans see this as progress to their effort to give tax cuts to the rich that will bankrupt the government further, loading up $1.5 trillion of debt at least, and 11 of the 20 Republicans who voted against it are from New York and New Jersey. And the reason is that New York, New Jersey, and California are facing tax increases under this package for the majority of taxpayers because they want to eliminate the deduction for state and local taxes. And we pay high state taxes in California, as do New Jersey and New York. And while the roadmap, it's not a proposal yet, we don't have the details, as the Florida congressman lamented, but what we're looking at is a proposal to increase the standard deduction by about the amount that I write off in state and local taxes every year. So, at least on the face of it, I would be not getting a tax break. It would be either an increase or no change. So this is an interesting, I think, predictor, with so many Republicans holding back from what is the big thing that Trump is hoping to accomplish, the only thing legislatively that he might be able to win this year. And by alienating Bob Corker and Jeff Flake, Republicans in the Senate, he makes his task even more difficult. And look at this. A new poll out. Let's see. This is the Associated Press NORC poll. 69% of adults who've heard at least a little bit about the tax plan think it would help large corporations. That is 70% of Democrats and 69% of Republicans. They know who's going to benefit from this. But they figure enough will trickle down to them, and it's Republicans and blah, blah, blah. Over at the Federal Communications Commission, they're putting the final touches on eliminating any connection between a broadcast license for radio or TV and the community served by that station. The first step was to roll back rules that require a station to have a local studio, and this will allow Sinclair and the other big chains to have stations that broadcast in a local area with no local content. And this becomes really serious when you look at the events in Minot, South Dakota. I think this was in 2004. A train derailment led to the release of toxic gas. And there are 8 radio stations, I think that's the number, in the Minot market. Not a single one of them had an operator on duty who could break into the robotic programming and say, hey, folks, stay inside. There are dangerous gases floating in the air around here. Now, this local studio rule has been widely abused. You can get a waiver already. But by making it permanent and by announcing that they are going to eliminate in a November meeting the newspaper cross-ownership rules, well, we're eliminating the last vestiges of attempts to limit the domination of a certain party, a certain point of view, in any given market in the United States. And so, the free market, fueled by social media, which is more effective than radio or TV, argued the broadcasters? Check out the article by Lee Fung that I've linked to in the show file for today's podcast. 2 members of the Senate, Cantwell from Washington, Wyden from Oregon, are demanding an investigation into the assignment of a $300 million contract to restore power in Puerto Rico to a company called Whitefish Energy, which appears to be linked to Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke. They're his cronies. And only 2 people work for Whitefish Energy. They're simply a conduit for money that will be paid out to contractors with a hefty profit pocketed by Whitefish. And this contract, which was no bid, has raised a lot of eyebrows. And our favorite gal from Puerto Rico, San Juan Mayor Carmen Cruz, said that the deal is alarming, asked for it to be terminated, and Whitefish said, okay, you want us to go now? And she said, no, please continue the work. And also at The Intercept, Kate Aronoff has done a great job of describing the efforts to impose disaster capitalism on Puerto Rico that are well underway. They have appointed a guy to be the chief transformation officer of the Electric Power Authority, PREPA, which was deeply in debt before this and, of course, is struggling to reconstruct a delivery system and generating systems for power in Puerto Rico. But the goal here is to privatize PREPA. It's going to happen. And to protect the vulture capitalists who sit on about $74 billion in municipal debt from the island Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. A group of members of the House and Senate are banding together. They're Democrats introducing legislation aimed at preventing Trump from launching a preemptive attack on North Korea. The bill is called the No Unconstitutional Strike Against North Korea Law, and it was introduced by Ed Markey of Massachusetts in the Senate and John Conyers of Michigan in the House. In China, the People's Congress has completed its work, and essentially they have raised the stature of current President Xi Jinping to that of Mao Zedong. And with Trump visiting shortly, the newly muscular Xi will likely be able to brush off the demands that he rein in North Korea, stop building in the Spratly Islands, and stop holding so much of our debt. Things have been pretty unpredictable and hard to read in Barcelona as Catalonia's separatist leader, Carles Puigdemont, announced today that he would place a decision on independence from Spain in front of the regional parliament. Now, Madrid has ordered no further action by the parliament on independence, so this is a showdown of sorts. But he announced some things yesterday and then backpedaled on them. He said he has been trying to get guarantees by offering to hold early elections, but Madrid has stiff-armed him, and that he is apparently, as a last-ditch effort, going to turn this over to the parliament, and it appears that Madrid will move in, take control, and put Puigdemont and his allies behind bars. I want to recommend an interesting story published 2 days ago by Vice News about the philanthropic intentions of Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, who is now the 5th most wealthy man on the planet at the age of 33, and he has pledged to give away more money than Bill Gates has. His current pledge is about $60 billion. The Gates Foundation has so far given away, or planned to give away, about $43 billion. And the biggest difference is that Zuck is planning to pay taxes on the Facebook stock that will be sold to generate cash to fund his initiatives. He's not using foundations or other entities to evade taxes. He also is initially spending $45 million on 2 issues that I completely support: criminal justice and incarceration reform, and the need for affordable housing, particularly here in California. Now, read the article, because Zuckerberg has set this up as a bit of a black box. It won't be transparent. Beyond his funding, you won't know whose money is in there. It's set up as a limited liability company, so the charity, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, named for his wife Priscilla and himself, could do all kinds of things that we wouldn't know about. But on the face of it, I find this interesting, and at the age of 33, for him to be committing so much to philanthropy is pretty remarkable. And finally today, I never thought I'd say this, but Poppy Bush, George H.W. Bush, the 95-year-old former president, former CIA director, is a serial groper and a dirty old man. We now have 2 women, actress Heather Lind and actress, her name is Grolnick here, let me find it, Jordana Grolnick. They both say that when they posed for pictures with Poppy Bush, standing next to him while he sat in his wheelchair, they were both groped on their butts while he said, do you want to know who my favorite magician is? This is a way to get people to smile for a picture, I guess. Well, one of the women reported, as I felt his hand dig into my flesh, he said, David Copperfield. And she said others in the room laughed politely and out of discomfort, while Barbara Bush said something along the lines of, he's going to get himself put into jail. Well, Barbara always has kind of blurted out the uncomfortable truth, even about her 95-year-old groping husband. Thanks for joining me today for my News and Comment podcast. It's available on YouTube, and I remain Peter B. Collins.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails.